individual had any criminal history. KVNU News Time is now 5:05. The annual thorny issue of compensation for city elected officials came up again during the regular meeting of the Logan Municipal Council on Tuesday. In a workshop item at that meeting, Human Resource Director Ambry Darley recommended that elected officials, the mayor and council members, receive a 4% increase in their annual compensation for the fiscal year starting July 1st. Other city employees will receive the same 4% increase. Darley defended the proposed pay increase, citing statistics from a 2022 pay study of similar-sized cities within Utah. That study found that the city manager of Spanish Fork, whose duties approximate those of Logan's mayor, was paid more than $207,000. The mayor and city managers of Murray, both of whom are full-time employees, are each paid more than $130,000 for a combined total of $260,000. The compensation gap between Logan officials and those of other Utah communities, according to Darley, resulted from local officials denying themselves pay raises for a decade following the collapse of the housing market in 2008. KVNU weather at 5:06. 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms in our forecast this evening. Partly cloudy skies. Some storms may produce strong gusty winds. Overnight low in the upper 40s. Sunny to partly sunny on Friday. Scattered showers and thunderstorms developing in the afternoon again tomorrow. High in the upper 70s. Just a slight chance of afternoon storms on Saturday. It's been to 76. Right now it's 61 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. If you need a new battery or wiper blades, Napa will make sure you get the right size for your vehicle. They will even help you install it. With Napa know-how, Napa Auto Parts, 5 locations from Preston to Providence.
Are you a hot sleeper? Warm summer nights can make it hard to sleep. UNI Furniture recommends sleeping cooler with a gel memory foam mattress. UNI features a copper-infused gel memory foam that helps with coolness and circulation. It moves better with you, giving you the best night's sleep. UNI is also the home of Chair Heaven. There's a reason they sell so many chairs, including recliners. Father's Day is coming up. Plan to take care of Dad with a new recliner. For over 90 years, there's always been a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
KVNU News Time is 5:07. The officer with the Ogden Police Department who was injured during a shootout with a suspect has been released from the hospital. The incident happened at the Washington Park Apartments in Ogden on Tuesday, a short time before 3:30 p.m., resulting in the death of a man and leaving a police officer injured. According to the preliminary information available, the officer was serving a protective order violation when the shooting took place. The officer reportedly encountered a man who was armed with a gun, leading to shots being fired. The identities of the suspect and the officer involved have not been released. The police department is expected to provide further updates as the investigation progresses. KVNU News Time is 5:08. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Sean Hannity from 1 till 4 on News Talk KVNU 102 FM and 610 AM.
If it's leaking, replace it. If it's worn, replace it. If you're constantly worrying about it with every windstorm, replace it. What are we talking about? Your roof. Palmer's Metal Mart is your place for a long-lasting, great-looking metal roof for your home, cabin, barn, or shed. Metal roofing is the put-it-up-and-forget-about-it roofing solution. For almost 30 years, people have chosen Palmer's Metal Mart for metal roofing for their selection, price, and most importantly, the professional help you get with your project. From start to finish, Metal Mart can help you with all the options for your amazing metal roof. Whether it's an accent on your roof or a complete re-roof, Palmer's Metal Mart is the place to go. Metal provides a unique and timeless look that gives the wow factor to any project. So come see the metal roofing experts at Palmer's Metal Mart, located in Lehigh and Logan. We're ready to help. Ask about quick same-day will calls or delivery to your door. Palmer's Metal Mart, everyone's metal store.
Heart valve disease is more common than you or your doctor may think, especially as you get older. It's serious but treatable with the proper diagnosis. If you or a loved one are experiencing shortness of breath, fatigue, chest tightness or pressure, dizziness or fainting, Talk to your doctor and ask for an echocardiogram to get diagnosed early and enjoy your best quality of life. Learn more at askforecho.com. That's ask4echo.com.
Serving overseas was just the beginning. We might be home from war, but our mission continues in communities all across the country. It's why we're out there in times of peace and crisis, providing meals to the hungry and supplies to the sick. It's why we're giving strength to those who are too weak and bringing resources to those without them. Service doesn't stop when we're done serving. It's what makes us the VFW. Learn more at vfw.org.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. It is hour 2 of today's show, Thursday, June 8th. Coming up, the Cache Employment and Training Center celebrating 62 years in Cache Valley. And they have posted a wish list of things they need if the community would like to help support them and celebrate that 62-year anniversary, which came this week, by the way. We'll be speaking with them later on in the hour. Kicking things off here, a very special guest that I'm excited to introduce because he is someone who can answer all the questions, and there are a lot of them right now when it comes to the announcement from the governor last night that via his Twitter account that there would be a special session. An official proclamation was out just a bit later. The special session will happen next week, and the goal of this, among some other things probably, is going to be primarily to tweak Utah election law. Representative Chris Stewart from the 2nd Congressional District announced he was going to be leaving Congress in September. The current existent law here in Utah does not allow for enough time for an election to take place, which would mean there would be an open seat in Congress until next spring, unless some changes are made. And so that is going to happen next week. What that might mean, even though we are not in the 2nd Congressional District, is that there may be some changes for us here as well when it comes to municipal races and more. So we reached out to our friend Representative Dan Johnson, who represents the 4th House District here in Cache Valley, basically Logan City proper and a bit outside. And Representative Johnson, appreciate you making some time for us, especially on short notice. All this is moving very quickly, and of course, the special session hasn't happened, so we can't say definitively what's going to change. But you are in conversations, right?
Yes, absolutely, Jason. And by the way, thanks a lot for having me here today.
Our pleasure.
Really important topic.
Our pleasure.
Yep. Conversations were ongoing. I know that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes work between the president of the Senate and his leadership team, the president of the House and his leadership team, and then the governor's office in order to, and the election officials in order to coordinate what is turning out to be, anyway, we hope, the best path forward.
And this is, these are obviously very unique circumstances. Congressman Stewart, to his credit, has tried to do this in a way that was as easy as possible, but citing health issues his wife is facing, he has to go this year. And my understanding is he's staying as long as he can at the request of House leadership at the federal level, but he also doesn't want to put Utah in a bad spot, and so you're going to have to meet as a legislature in a special session, tweak the law just a bit, and possibly that may mean pushing back municipal election day, right?
Yes, you've got the facts of this absolutely correct, and that's what's going to happen. There may be some disruption, and I think that the piece of it that's going to happen with the municipal election is that those who are running, there's going to be a little bit more time before their election actually happens because it's being backed up a week. And I think that's an inconvenience for those that maybe have mapped out a campaign plan. We're hoping that they understand, though.
Sure. And again, without any specific details, not fair for me to ask you right now if you're going to vote for this, but are you supportive of these changes? The alternative is possibly 9 months without with an entire congressional district without a representative in Congress, right?
Yes, and for Utah, we don't want that. I mean, when you think about it, 25% of the federal delegation on the House side would be absent, and that is not good. The other thing that we found out, I don't know what the pieces of legislation are, but we understand that there's some important votes that are going to happen in December. And so for the representation of the state of Utah, I think it's really important that we have a complete delegation there.
Sure. And again, for listeners, even though the special election will be for the 2nd Congressional District and we are here in the 1st, we may be affected by this because in order to make time to meet state law, 90-day periods have to happen between primaries and election days and things like that. So to make all that work out, the election day, the general election day, would have to be pushed back a week or maybe two. That will all be decided officially next week in the special session. And Representative Johnson, have you had a chance? I know this is all literally last 24 hours kind of thing, but have you by chance had any opportunity to speak with city leaders here in Cache Valley to see how they're reacting to this possibility?
No, I haven't yet because it like I say, it's just happening, and that vote will happen next week in special session.
Sure.
So I do think that one thing that's good about this is that you don't have to spend money on two separate sets of ballots going out.
Sure.
Which would happen if you had a municipal election at one time, and then you had the congressional election that we're going to have done another time. So one of the advantages is that you can have all of that on one ballot. And so when people go to vote, it's taken care of. You don't have to ask them to, be voting on a couple of different times.
Sure.
I don't know how inconvenient that is, but I do know there's an expense to it, and that will be mitigated because you'll have one ballot.
Sure. And that's not a strange or unusual goal by any means to try and consolidate things. In fact, I was. This is something I learned, Representative Johnson. I was looking for some political science on this, some research on this, and there's actually something called election fatigue, in which political scientists recommend to policymakers you don't schedule elections too close to each other because no one comes to the second one.
Yeah,
they've had enough at that point, and they don't show up for the second one. A lot of things to consider here, and obviously these special potential election law changes, potentially pushing back municipal races, which would affect even those of us here in District 1 and all the city races this year. That will all be decided next week in a special session. Anything else that might be on the calendar for that special session that you're hearing wind of, or that maybe you're trying to get added to the calendar?
We haven't heard that yet. And if there was something, of course, where the governor has to call us into special session for this.
Sure.
We haven't heard that other items have been asked for to be put on that agenda. But moving forward, if there's some fixes to a few things, like in the last session, Representative Snyder fixed some of the situation for how, families who have somebody that dies in service, like a firefighter, they get the money that is coming to them. And so that was a very important fix we took advantage of the opportunity to fix that in the last special session, even though the main thing was making sure that we had enough money to cover flood issues across the state. So every now and then something like that will perk up and you go, oh my gosh, we better pay attention to that and get it done. So
sure.
There may be something like that, but I don't know of any yet.
And again, most of this is just 24 hours old. The governor made the announcement last night. Congressman Stewart actually just this week made it official that he would be leaving, I believe, September 15th. And that had to happen first before any of these decisions could be made. So things happening very rapidly here. But there you have it, kind of an inside view of the discussions where they're at and what we can expect, at least partway next week during this special session the governor has called to tweak the election law to allow for a special election to play out this year rather than next spring, to replace Congressman Chris Stewart. And again, the way it would affect us here in Cache Valley, supposedly at this point, the bill has not been voted on until the special session, but it may mean delaying municipal election day from the first week of November to the third week of November, or something like that. But we'll know for sure next week as this plays out. Representative Dan Johnson, again, our guest here. And Representative Johnson, I appreciate you doing this because I know the answers aren't firm right now, and there are still a lot of unknowns, but I appreciate you supplying some background on where we're at so far as this develops. And I know, while we have you, everyone has this concept of the legislative session, that 45 days, that's when lawmakers do their work, and that's the only time. That's never the case. Anything you're working on that you'd like to tell listeners about while we've got you here? I know you always have something on the back burner ready for the next session, right?
I do. I would just like to share something that I think that most people don't know. One of the things, that I work quite a bit with nonprofits because they don't get a lot of state money. They do a lot of fundraising, grant writing, and they provide all of these services, different kinds of services for people in need across northern Utah. And one of the things, and I really like that because they do the work that needs to be done in a way that government can't do it and shouldn't do it. And so I'd just like to share a little bit. In this last session, this just affects some of our local nonprofits. CAPSA got $565,000 in ongoing money. The Options for Independence got another $120,000 ongoing to help pay for staff.
Wow.
The food pantry locally got $1 million in order to expand that facility. The receiving center, which is new, got $1.8 million for their building and $3.2 million ongoing to provide those services through the Bear River Health. And then CAPS, in addition, got another $269,000 for homeless funding and emergency shelter. So one of the things that we can do is provide some basic money for these real important nonprofits that allow them to each year know that they can start their multi-million-dollar budgets with just a little bit of money.
Sure.
And then they do their fundraising to get the rest. But I thought I would share that with you, and that was the work of the the representatives and senators here in northern Utah working really, really hard to get these kinds of things in place for Rich County, for Cache County, and for Box Elder, and as that spread out across these different places that that people have access to, I think it's going to really help build strong families and keep kids safe. And those are the most important reasons for doing it. Once again, it's like keeping families strong and keeping kids safe.
I love that you're getting creative, too, about how to best support nonprofits. The state always has, and we can always probably do it in a better way. And I like this idea of giving them a little seed money, a little leg up at the start of the year that might save taxpayers money, but also help them carry through the rest of the year. And for listeners, we're talking about organizations like food pantries, CAPSA. We're talking about groups that do very, very integral work as nonprofits here in Cache Valley. And Representative Johnson has been recognized multiple times over for his work with supporting nonprofits through the state budget process and more. And looking out for Cache Valley as well. And hats off to you for that. I know Cache Valley representatives in the House there, you're very much outnumbered, but you fight the good fight and you make sure we're represented, right?
Yeah, that's really it. I just like to say I'm really fortunate to work with really good representatives and senators in this area, and they really try hard to represent their particular districts and then just the region in general. So really happy about that. And then, Jason, I'd say one other thing is that we worked really, really hard to support public and higher education. And I got to tell you, our two local school districts here in Cache Valley and Utah State University got well funded, and I noticed that the school boards and the superintendents and principals and teachers they are very, very appreciative of the efforts that were made on their behalf, and so I just wanted to let you know that that's another fight that is pretty long and tedious sometimes, but it's a very, very important one because we need to have the strongest education possible, whether it's in our local charter schools or whether it's in our regular public schools or at Utah State University. But then also, the options that are available for the kids out at Bridgeland Applied Technology and how that organization there is asserting itself in our region. And I mean, it's just remarkable. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'm really, really, really thankful for the education opportunities that are available for kids and families at all levels.
Sure. And again, it doesn't happen by accident. This is planning and being a voice for Cache Valley that our elected officials have an opportunity to be during that 45-day session and beyond, as will happen next week in the special session. So Representative Johnson, always a pleasure to have you join us here on the show, and I appreciate this. Every time I say this, I take more of your time than I've asked for, and so we owe you one. But if you ever
you're great.
You ever need us to say something bad about Representative Snyder or Peterson, just let us know. We'll be there for you. We'll be there for you.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks again for your time, and to our listeners, thanks for your time as well. We'll keep you posted as things develop, but there you have it, the word so far on this upcoming special session to tweak Utah's election law, which may affect the general election date for municipal races, even here in District 1. So we'll see how this plays out next week, but some behind-the-scenes information there as discussions continue in this really developing story that started just yesterday afternoon from Representative Dan Johnson there. Appreciate his time, appreciate your time as well, and, stick with us. We'll be back right after this.
When you buy Napa Auto Parts, you're getting the best. Pull into any one of the 5 locally owned Preston to Providence Napa Auto Parts stores. They'll not only make sure you get the right battery or wiper blades, but they'll even help you install it. And if you need other work done, they can recommend a dozen Napa Auto Care Centers with ASE certified technicians. That's Napa know-how.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends, look closer. Right in your community, there are youth who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So, look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. Covenant House is the national leader providing safe housing for youth, 50 years strong. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. Every youth who walks into Covenant House gets clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So, look closer at Covenant House and help us fight youth homelessness. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Thanks again to Representative Dan Johnson. We'll keep you posted as things develop on the front of this special session the governor called last night and what it might mean going forward. One thing it's likely to mean is pushing back general election day for municipal races. Even though this is a District 2 special election to replace Congressman Stewart, to make all of it work out, they're going to likely have to move election day from the first week of November statewide to comply with state law they wrote. So we'll see, but that's the likely outcome of this. Some behind-the-scenes look at the discussions as they're playing out from Representative Dan Johnson there, as well as an update on things he's working on and what comes next in the legislative session in January as well. So thanks to Dan Johnson again, Representative Johnson, for taking the time for us today. On the other side of the news, we've all felt this. We've all looked to the upcoming generation or just looked around us, and you hear it phrased in ways like, yeah, things are just going downhill. You know, heck in a handbasket. This new generation, the morals are declining. There are a lot of different ways people will say it. But is it true, or is it an illusion that everyone develops in their head as they age? Well, some researchers decided this was a question science could answer, actually. We'll talk about how they conducted the research and their conclusions about the illusion of moral decline from generation to generation. That's coming up on the other side of these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:31. The news brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. You can go fly a kite this Saturday at the Family Place, Utah on KVNU's For the People program on Wednesday. Associate Director Jennifer Anderson told us more about their Fly with the Family Place event.
It's from 12 noon until 2 p.m., and it's at the Belva Hansen, the Family Place building in Logan. And so right outside on the green, families can come. It is free to all families. We're going to have food, kite flying. Every child that comes while supplies last, we're going to have a new kite for them, face painting, sidewalk chalk, and just a great time for families to be able to connect not only with each other, but with other families and children in the community.
Anderson said there are a variety of things right now that are causing mental health concerns for all members of the family, and there seems to be an escalation with various things going on in the world and even in the community. Fortunately, the Family Place is there as a resource to help people deal and cope with these issues. One area is the mental health first aid classes, and one focuses on youth. Anderson explained it's not for the teenagers themselves to attend, but for adults that have youth in their lives that they want to know how to best approach, helping them to be a support for their mental health.
And so that class is starting on June 10th, and it is actually going to be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So there's a certification that comes with it, just like CPR has a certification. It's the same approach, but it's with mental health. So you're not trying to be the therapist or the doctor in the case of CPR or first aid training, but you're just having information so you know how to best respond to a situation that could be happening and how you could support and help that individual or yourself.
Also, there's a variety of kids' summer day camps that are ideal for 6 to 11-year-olds. The Family Place Utah serves Cache, Rich, and Franklin counties. You can get more information on all their classes and events at the familyplaceutah.org. And as we were talking with Representative Dan Johnson in this hour for the people, Representative Chris Stewart has officially submitted his letter of resignation from Congress. Governor Cox has outlined the timeline for picking a replacement for him once he steps down. According to the resignation letter, Stewart will step down from his seat effective September 15th. Late Wednesday, Cox issued a proclamation calling for a special election and outlining the timeline for that. According to the governor's office, the primary election to fill Stewart's seat and for municipal races will take place September 5th. The general election will follow on November 21st. The governor is also calling the Utah legislature into special session next Wednesday, June 14th at 4 p.m. to formalize the new election dates and appropriate money for them. KVNU News Time is 5:35.
If you've ever passed by 485 North Main, you've likely noticed how well kept the property is. The grass is always green and the flower beds are always well kept and in bloom. What you see on the outside is exactly what you'll find inside. Care and attention to detail. Exactly what you want when you're dealing with one of your most important senses, your hearing. Dr. Daines' love and care for the community has always gone beyond the front steps at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. So if you're not hearing as well as you used to, stop in at 485 North Main in Logan or visit them online at cachehearing.com.
Sources tell ABC News that former President Trump has been indicted by a federal grand jury investigating his handling of highly classified documents recovered from Mar-a-Lago. He's the first former president ever to be indicted on federal charges. The investigation, about a year in the making. Special counsel Jack Smith's office has been gathering evidence since November on two fronts: classified documents and on the events leading up to and including January 6th. ABC News senior national correspondent Aaron Katersky outside of federal court in Miami, where one of two grand juries has been hearing evidence.
All day here at the court, we saw members of the special counsel's team go in and out of a grand jury room. What they were doing, we can't know any of that because of grand jury secrecy. But we do know this grand jury has been hearing evidence for some time, along with one in Washington, D.C., and that reflects the two different places where potential criminal conduct may have occurred.
I'm Dave Packer, ABC News.
KVNU weather at 5:36. Still a threat of showers and thunderstorms. 50% chance tonight. Some of the storms may produce strong gusty winds this evening. Overnight low in the upper 40s, and then sunny in the morning. Partly sunny, scattered showers and storms in the afternoon on Friday. Upper 70s for the high. 30% chance of storms. Just a slight chance on Saturday afternoon, and the high around 80. 76, our high today at 66 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather is brought to you by Logan Extermination. Bugs and all their creepy friends want to come inside. Call Logan Extermination to come spray your foundation and keep them out for only $55 per month. Call 435-752-8450. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Coming up on the Friday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, we're continuing to look at the various Republican candidates. Might even get a chance to speak to one of them, former Vice President Mike Pence. Plus, we'll break down the possibility of federal charges coming against Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. How will the Trump camp respond? How will the American people respond? We'll talk about it on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Dr. Anita Chandra with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Helmets are important for every bike ride, no matter how short. Did you know helmets are also important to wear when skateboarding, inline skating, or riding a scooter? A helmet can protect against a skull fracture or other facial injuries. Look for a helmet that fits correctly and that's certified for safety. Make sure you and your child wear a helmet every time. For more, visit healthychildren.org or talk with your pediatrician.
Our most vulnerable veterans are isolated at hospitals, and during their greatest time of need, their loved ones can have little or no contact with them. Imagine having to shelter in place forever. Learn how you can help at healvets.org. Help Heal Veterans, with the support of citizens like you, is making things better together. Learn more at healvets.org. This message is furnished by Help Heal Veterans, a not-for-profit organization.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Great question from a listener here that I didn't ask this on air because it's something that I could tell you right now that Representative Johnson wouldn't be able to answer yet because, this is a special session question. But the question was, what is the cost going to be for cities of moving the election back 2 weeks? My guess is the cost would be pretty minimal at this point because it's early enough, but it won't be zero. And then let's be honest, this is happening because, for two reasons, and one I'm sympathetic to, the other one, and let's also be completely honest, Democrats would do the same thing. So this isn't criticizing the Republican Party alone. This is something either of the major parties would do. But what this is really all about is Kevin McCarthy has a small majority in the House back in D.C. And so Congressman Stewart's timing is poor because he announced he's leaving Congress. And I assume this wasn't by his choice. He cited some health issues his wife is facing and that he needed to be out by September. But, yeah, the timing is poor. It would have been probably better even just a few weeks previous to now if he had made the announcement, because basically he announced it in a way that only left 85 days between a candidate filing period and a primary, which has to play out 90 days before a general election. And state law says you have to have 90 days between both. So it would have been breaking state law to actually hold an August primary at this point in this special election in District 2. So that's the short and sweet of this. And so they're going to change election law in Utah to make sure that Kevin McCarthy back in D.C. isn't short a seat because there are going to be some votes, apparently some important votes coming up in which being short a seat is going to be a big deal for the Republican majority in the House. Missing one seat might mean Democrats get to decide what passes and fails. It could come down to that. So that's really what this is about. And current election law in Utah, the way it's written, we would have had to wait until next spring to have a special election. So that's a long time for District 2 to not be represented in Congress, though it has happened before and isn't the end of the world. It's a justifiable excuse for doing this, I think. But yeah, the cost to cities isn't going to be zero, but I'm guessing it's going to be pretty minimal because we're just, candidate filing period wraps up the same, before the candidate filing period will wrap up before they actually change the date of the general election in November, which will happen next week. I get why to a lot of folks this is distasteful. It is, but I think at the same time it's not going to be the end of the world, and moving the election back 2 weeks to the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. My biggest concern would be, will any of this depress turnout or cause people to not vote when they otherwise would have? I don't think so. I can't see why this would. If anything, it might increase turnout because the election is now getting a lot more attention than it otherwise usually would because of this, snafu. So But great question from a listener. And we'll know, I didn't ask that question of Representative Johnson because I know he doesn't know the answer yet. But after the special session plays out next week, we will know the answer, because if there is money appropriated to offset the cost, that means that they've done their homework and assessed the potential cost. So we'll see when the special session actually happens next week how expensive or not this is going to be for cities after making all the announcements of Election Day, first week of November, to have to change all of that. So we'll see. Keep your eye on this one, to say the least. Special session will happen next Wednesday, and then we'll know for sure. All right. Everybody thinks this in a different way, so I'm not sure how best to explain it that will be relatable to you, but we've all heard our parents say this, and as we age, maybe we've said it ourselves, but everyone looks at the up-and-coming generation and kind of assesses that there's been general decline. And a lot of the times this is a joke, almost a satirical reference to kids these days and their pants and their loud music. But this is a real thing, and it plays out on a deeper level for a lot of people. In fact, there was some recent research done of religious communities in the United States along these lines, and the consensus was in almost every organized religious community, meaning a religious community that is organized around a central belief system, and they have a name basically for the religion. It's not just a group studying the Bible. In those groups of everyone surveyed, almost everyone said that there was moral decline, that they're seeing the world become a worse place when it comes to morality. Some references, even to biblical prophecy will sometimes come up. So it's something we've all been surrounded by. Well, some researchers decided they wanted to look into this, and they wanted to first define how people perceive. How are people defining moral decline when they say things are getting worse, or the new generation, their morals are watered down, or not as valued by this up and coming generation as my own or the one before me. How are people defining that? So that was the first thing these researchers did. They did a couple of different studies, but they first dug into databases of major survey research providers, all of them, from Gallup to the Pew surveying that's done, and they ended up with a sample size of about 300,000 Americans that had been surveyed, enough to make it into this larger database of surveys in general that could fit into the questions they were asking. Questions like, do you think that over the last few decades society has become less honest or more honest? Do you think over the last few decades the world has become more ethical? Is there more corruption in politics or even in religious circles these days than there was 10 years ago? Questions like that, basically. And what they found is that participants were generally more likely to perceive moral decline the longer the time period you asked about. If you ask someone, for example, do you think things have morally gotten worse in the last 12 months? They'd say no. Most respondents said no, not in the last year. But if you ask them, have things morally declined, regardless of how you're defining moral, regardless of what an individual's definition of morality was, when asked, do you think morality has declined over the last 20 years, almost everyone, 82%, said yes. But those same people, again, when asked if things had declined morally over the last 12 months or 18 months or 2 years, said no. So the shorter the time frame, the more likely a person was to answer the question no. The longer the time frame, the more likely they were to answer yes to the question, is there general moral decline? So then the researchers said, okay, what do they attribute this to? Let's look into that as well. They did some of their own surveying, but then they also went back to the same database of about 20 years of surveying with these types of questions. Now, Gallup is the polling company that generally asks these types of broader, almost philosophical questions because Gallup polls daily. They don't wait for elections. They don't. But Pew also does the same thing. And then there are a lot of surprisingly business oriented surveyors, but people who don't survey elections or public opinion on political topics or public policy topics, but rather survey the market to help businesses with their own marketing plan. They got access to that data too for their research. And what they found is that when asking these questions and trying to determine what people attribute to their perceived moral decline, well, that's where some of the clues started to pop up. Because participants who believe that morality had declined on average over a 15-year to 20-year period. Again, those people who were asked about 15 to 20 years ago said, yes, it's declined since then. People who were asked, is it declined in the last 2 years, generally said no. So they went to the people who said, yes, it's declined over the last 15 to 20 years, and they dug into the data on these people and how they'd answered questions about successive generations and declining morality. And that's where things started to unravel a bit because people attributed moral decline to mainly their perceptions of the up-and-coming generation. Or let's put this another way. When a person is likely to see moral decline, they are also likely to disapprove of the up-and-coming generation more so. So the higher an individual answering a survey's disapproval of the latest generation, so say a Gen Xer looking at Gen Z right now, the higher the likely, or the higher they disapproved of Gen Z, the higher they were likely to say, the higher their response would be on a scale to 1 to 10 of, is the world in moral decline? But the researchers said, here's where things are interesting. When we asked them how they define moral decline, they would list things that there is documented, accessible evidence has actually improved. Modern humans, they're basically saying, by and large, treat each other far better than the previous generation did from a crime data perspective, from a whether it be theft, murder, or rape. This held up. Now, of course, there are more people now, and that throws things off a little bit, but the researchers adjusted for that. What they found, again, is that from a statistical point of view, when going with what people listed as why they feel there's been moral decline, the evidence contradicts that belief. The evidence would suggest, here's what the researchers concluded. Either people are not able to articulate what and why specifically they see or perceive moral decline from decade to decade, and that throws this off, or they are able to articulate that and answer the questions honestly about how they're defining moral decline and just are unaware of the data that shows, well, if these are the things that are important to you when assessing the world around you and saying, are we on a good moral trajectory? If these are the things that are important to you, the data suggests yes. And yet, again, most people answer the question no. It's fascinating how they did this. And it's also very revealing about how people perceive moral decline itself. What does that mean to an individual? So like all studies, the researchers say great limitations on this one, but they believe they've opened a window here into understanding a little bit why every generation looks at the up-and-coming generation and says, where is this world going? It's human nature, the researchers conclude. It's human nature to feel when you don't understand the music, the books, what's popular, the clothes they're wearing, to just instinctually attribute that to a negative change. Not because it is, not because there's any data supporting that, but because it's different. And difference It's our very nature, implies bad. But the researchers said, in conclusion, the illusion of moral decline from generation to generation is just that, an illusion. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. It was eye-opening for me to read through this. Hopefully it will be for you as well. We'll be back right after this.
Back in Logan for one night only. Gary Morris. Gary Morris live at the Danes Concert Hall on the USU campus. Gary Morris, June 10th with special guest Hearts of Steel. Get your tickets now at the USU ticket office or at Ruby's Restaurant in Logan. Gary Morris, live June 10th at the USU Danes Concert Hall.
My friend John Hansen at the Duct Hunter has constantly educated you about the need for ductwork cleaning in your home. But what about your cabin or summer home outside the valley? You need that home's ductwork cleaned too. With high pollen counts in the mountains, dust always in the wind, and road construction ever present, the old adage of out of sight, out of mind is bad. Give the Duct Hunter a call at 770-4813 to clean out those dirty ducts in your summer home.
We are the Duct Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duct Hunter.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I just want to give him one more shout out. Thanks again to Representative Dan Johnson. It was glad to have him on the show. Glad he was able to do it, but recognizing that it was really kind of unfair to throw him out there in the spotlight already, because this is very quickly developing. All we know at this point is the governor has called a special session, and likely the legislature will be changing election law in Utah. The reason for this, again, this part we do know. Representative Chris Stewart, Congressman Chris Stewart, is resigning from his post in the U.S. Congress after just being reelected in November. And he's doing that citing health concerns of his wife, health issues his wife is going to be facing. And so it's basically it means that there wasn't enough time to comply with state law, and so the special election wouldn't be able to happen until next spring. And Congressman Stewart was out in September either way. So District 2 wouldn't have a representative for more than 6 months, possibly. What this is really about, again, is Kevin McCarthy would be one seat short in what is already a small majority in his speakership and the Republican House majority. So I assure you there was probably great pressure from the National Party on the lawmakers and the governor to get something worked out. It hasn't been worked out yet. The special session will happen again next week. And just wanted to, again, throw out a thank you to Representative Dan Johnson. This is one of those situations where every one of the lawmakers that I could have reached out to could have justifiably said, you know what, I can't really say anything right now. But for Representative Johnson, he was gracious enough to come on and let us know what the discussions are right now. And so, again, that kind of confirms things that it sounds like that's the discussion they're having, where things are likely to go, meaning that municipal election day in November will likely be pushed back a week or two. Some have said this is not a good idea. It could decrease turnout. I don't see how that happens. If anything, this has brought more eyeballs and ears to the fact that municipal elections are happening, and will do so again next week when the special session plays out, especially if there's some controversy around this and some disagreement, and that gets in the news. Those things have a tendency to actually increase turnout. So I think we'll be okay. But either way, definitely odd circumstances, and it does put lawmakers in a tough spot because they're kind of rushing into this next week to solve a problem that was kind of thrown at them also very rapidly and without much warning. So thanks again to Representative Dan Johnson for putting himself out there in that respect. But coming up tomorrow on the show, the CETC The Cash Employment Training Center are celebrating their 62nd year in operation as a nonprofit here in Cache Valley. Also, the For the People movie show with Andy Morgan. We were off last week. I was out of town, so we're back live tomorrow, and Andy has some catching up to do. There were new films in theaters last weekend we missed, and a couple more coming, actually one of them tonight. So we'll talk about that all in the For the People movie show tomorrow in hour 2 at 5 o'clock. So thank you for tuning in to today's show. Please stay tuned. Dave Ramsey is next here on KVNU Logan.
In Washington, when it's happening on Wall Street.
That's the reason why we're going to continue, because I believe there is a cause here.
News Talk KVNU Logan.